Welcome to the Deep Dive, your go-to for really digging into the insights that matter from experts and stories you need to hear. Today, we're diving into something most of us have opinions on, but often only see from the surface: weight loss. Many of you, like me, might have always focused on the how, the diet, the exercise, the numbers on the scale. But what happens after that initial success, after the weight comes off and the scale settles? That's the real unaddressed space, isn't it? That deeper story. Our mission today is to take a deep dive into the profound insights of Dan Hollis, drawing from compelling sources that truly go beyond the scale. We're going to unpack the psychological journey that often follows weight loss, exploring everything from the nuances of identity and shape-shifting cravings to how we truly navigate the inevitable setbacks. Because, as Dan Hollis so powerfully puts it, weight loss is biology. Staying there is narrative. Get ready, because we're going to explore what it means to experience identity grief, how hunger transforms into a different kind of signal, and why failing gracefully isn't just about weight, but about how we approach challenges in our entire lives.
And that concept of narrative is precisely the core of what we're exploring. While the initial biological changes are undeniably significant in weight loss, the sustained transformation, the ability to stay there, as Dan says, hinges almost entirely on the stories we construct about ourselves and the new structures we diligently build around those stories.
Right, the stories we tell ourselves.
Exactly. And what's often overlooked, and something Dan highlights repeatedly, is how many weight loss programs focus so intently on the initial reduction, but then completely miss this crucial post-weight loss psychological terrain.
They just drop you off at the summit.
Kind of, yeah. It leaves people feeling incredibly unprepared for what comes next, almost like reaching a summit only to find the map for the descent is missing.
That's such a powerful analogy, the missing map. And that silence after the immediate goal is met is exactly where the deeper journey often begins. Dan Hollis shares an insight that's both simple and, well, unsettling. The weight came off, then I realized I had no idea who I was without it. Think about it. For years, perhaps, your relationship with food or your body was a central part of your identity, your coping mechanism, your story. When that's suddenly gone, it's not just a physical void, but a profound disorientation. Is what our sources describe as identity grief, a real sense of loss for a part of yourself, even a part you thought you wanted to shed.
Even a part you actively worked to change.
This experience is the exact opposite of what you see in those celebratory ads or the triumphant before and after reels, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Those moments of quiet, after the cheering stops and the congratulations fade, are where a very real, often unaddressed struggle truly begins. It's a space that's rarely talked about, yet so many people inhabit it. Expert, when Dan Hollis says meaning becomes more important than metabolism here, what does he mean by that? How does our identity get so tangled up in our physical being?
It's a fantastic question, and it really gets to the heart of Dan's work. He explains that the space left behind by weight loss isn't merely physical. It's often a void where old coping mechanisms, familiar comforts, or deeply ingrained self-perceptions used to reside.
Okay.
If you've identified as the heavier one or the one who struggles with food for decades, losing weight removes a core part of that self-definition. Suddenly, the internal compass is spinning. Dan suggests that we often seek meaning, comfort, or control through food, and when that avenue is removed, a deeper existential question emerges.
Right, like what was that really about?
Exactly. This also changes the nature of what we traditionally call hunger. It doesn't just vanish, it shapeshifts.
Shapeshifts. Interesting word.
It morphs into memory, confusion, and a new kind of space within us. Imagine a feeling that used to be a clear physical signal, now it's a whisper from the past, an echo of comfort, or maybe just a vague unease. And if that emotional or psychological space isn't filled constructively, with new meaning, new habits, new ways of understanding ourselves, well, the old craving can return, but crucially, it's not necessarily as physical hunger.
So it's not the stomach growling, it's the mind reaching for familiarity.
Precisely.
This really drives home Dan's crucial distinction.
Yeah.
People don't relapse into hunger, they relapse into confusion. That's incredibly powerful because it shifts our understanding from a purely biological impulse to a psychological void, as you said. It underscores why the story you tell yourself, the narrative you actively construct in this new uncharted territory, becomes absolutely critical for sustained change. So if we're left with this new, often confusing space after the weight comes off, what does Dan Hollis suggest we actually do with it? How do we start to build something new in that void?
Dan would tell us you don't just sit in it, you have to build. You scaffold.
Scaffold, okay.
You stitch new rituals and practices into your old routines.
Yeah.
You treat that resurfacing hunger, that confusion, not as a villain to be fought, but as a signal.
A signal.
Yeah, a message that something inside you still needs naming, still needs to be addressed. It's an opportunity, not a failure if you approach it correctly. He uses this powerful metaphor of neurobiological scaffolding.
Okay, break that down for us.
For anyone who hasn't heard that term, think of it as literally building new, reinforced neural pathways in your brain. It's not optional. It's a fundamental support system for your brain to adapt to these new patterns and learn to cope without the old comforts and signals.
So you're actively rewiring things.
You have to. Without this new internal structure, the brain will naturally default to the strongest, most familiar pathways, often the old, unhelpful ones.
That makes so much sense. It's like your brain is trying to find the easiest road, and if the old road is the most paved, it'll take it unless you actively build a new one. And speaking of signals and quieting the noise, Dan Hollis also touches on treatments like semaglutide. For those who aren't familiar, these medications work by mimicking a hormone that helps reduce appetite signals in the brain, essentially quieting some of that biological noise of cravings. But here's Dan's caution. This very silence, while incredibly helpful for some, can be dangerous if the deeper buried stories and emotional truths aren't addressed.
Exactly. That's the key point.
It's not a magic bullet, is it? The quiet simply allows what was hidden to surface.
Absolutely. When the cravings subside, Dan states that when the cravings stop, the truth begins.
Wow. The truth begins.
It's a profound observation. It suggests that the cessation of intense appetite doesn't just create a physical quiet, but an emotional one, allowing deeper, often unaddressed emotional issues to surface. These might be the very issues that food or old coping mechanisms previously kept at bay.
The things you didn't have to face before.
Precisely. The scaffolding we talked about earlier isn't merely helpful, it's truly structural. It provides the necessary framework for individuals to process these rising truths and, crucially, to build new, healthier coping mechanisms in their place.
So the support needs to be as real as the biological change.
It has to be. If we connect this to the bigger picture for you, our listener, how might understanding this shift in cravings from a biological need to an emotional signal change your approach to personal challenges? It encourages a deeper inquiry, a move from asking, what do I want to eat, to what am I really feeling?
Oh, okay.
This reframe is central to building a sustainable narrative because it moves you from reaction to reflection.
That's a powerful way to think about it. Understanding that internal dialogue, shifting hunger from a fight to a signal, truly resonates. And it makes me think about those moments we often label as failure. We've all been there, right?
Oh, definitely.
I used to think a setback meant I wasn't cut out for something, that I was weak, undisciplined, or just plain broken. It felt like an indictment of my entire character.
A very common feeling.
But Dan Hollis completely reframes how we look at those stumbles, not just in weight loss, but in every facet of life. Expert, what is his powerful redefinition of failure?
Dan teaches us that failure isn't the end, it's a message, a moment of feedback. And sometimes it's the most honest conversation you'll ever have with yourself.
An honest conversation, not a verdict.
Exactly. It's not a shame story, it's a data point. It's something we can observe, learn from, and ultimately build upon. This changes everything because it moves us away from self-blame and towards self-understanding. For example, if you find yourself reaching for an old comfort food, that's not a moral failing, it's information.
Just data.
It's your brain sending a message that something is unresolved or an old pathway is still strong. Building on that, Dan explains that relapse isn't a betrayal of progress, as many perceive it, but rather the brain asking for the old familiar rhythm.
Familiar with them.
It's a deeply ingrained pattern, a neural pathway seeking its comfortable groove. And when you ignore that signal, when you judge yourself harshly rather than listening, you don't just fail, you risk fracturing the very foundation of your new habits and confidence.
You break trust with yourself almost.
In a way, yes. This raises an important question. Are we listening to these signals or judging them? Because one path leads to learning, the other to further confusion.
That's such a crucial distinction, listening versus judging. It also leads to a key insight about preparation, doesn't it? That it's not the medication that fails, but our preparation for what comes after.
Exactly. Dan states, most people aren't failing semaglutide. They're failing to prepare for what comes after it.
Wow.
This highlights the critical need for a proactive psychological strategy for building that scaffolding we discussed earlier before the noise of the cravings fades. Dan teaches that setbacks are actually sacred if we're willing to look at them with curiosity instead of judgment.
Curiosity, not judgment. That feels lighter.
It is. This approach empowers learning and resilience, turning what seems like a defeat into a valuable lesson that informs your next step.
That distinction between judgment and curiosity is absolutely critical. It helps dismantle the shame we often pile on ourselves. As Dan puts it, the shame isn't in failing. The shame is in pretending you were supposed to be perfect.
Mm-hmm. Such a freeing idea.
We're not meant to be flawless. We're meant to learn and adapt. It's almost a radical act of self-compassion. And what Dan calls grace is built precisely when you respond to a stumble by reaching for a better tool, by seeking understanding, instead of reaching for blame or self-condemnation.
Right. Choosing a different response.
It's about being kind to yourself while also being honest. The critical question he asks us to ponder is, what story am I telling myself about this failure? And is that story helping me become who I want to be?
That's the narrative piece again.
Exactly. This is where our narrative memory, how we actively remember and frame our past experiences, and the language we use become powerful tools, not just for moving past a setback, but for failing forward into a stronger future. It's about consciously shaping the past to serve the present.
Indeed, that ability to consciously shape our past experiences into a new narrative is what truly empowers change. Dan connects all these threads, highlighting the profound insight that weight loss can change your body, but only story can change your future.
Only story can change your future.
And if you're not careful, biology will give you results that psychology will dismantle.
Oof, that hits hard. Biology gives results psychology dismantles.
It underscores the absolutely critical role of the internal narrative in sustaining any significant change. Without a new, supportive story, the old patterns, the confusion, the unaddressed truths can easily pull us back to what's familiar, even if it's detrimental. He doesn't promise comfort in this journey, which might seem counterintuitive for a guide.
Yeah, you'd expect comfort.
But he promises clarity. And sometimes that clarity, that unvarnished truth about ourselves and our patterns, is more valuable than anything else we could seek. For example, understanding that a craving is a memory of comfort, not physical hunger, provides immense clarity, allowing for a conscious choice rather than an automatic reaction.
Seeing it for what it is.
Exactly. It's this clarity that becomes the foundation for true, lasting transformation. It allows you to see the path, even when it's challenging.
What a deep dive this has been into the terrain after the immediate victory of weight loss. It's so clear now that true, lasting change isn't just about the numbers on the scale. It's profoundly about the stories we live, the narratives we build, and the scaffolding we construct to support our new selves.
It really is a deeper game.
Dan Hollis helps us see this entire journey isn't merely about eating less. It's about living more. He offers us language, scaffolding, and narrative memory to help us all come home to ourselves. We truly hope this deep dive has given you a powerful new lens through which to view not just weight loss, but any significant personal transformation you might be navigating in your life.
So as you go about your week, maybe consider what truths might be waiting to speak in the silence of your own life, especially when old habits or comforts fade away. How might actively creating a new, supportive narrative empower you to not just achieve, but sustain the changes you desire? Remember, the work isn't just in the doing, but in the becoming, in evolving the story of who you are.